Done. Ed,
Okay.
please continue.
Okay, in front of everybody is the, couple of documents. First, Volume C, which is a tentative budget as it is so far built. You have a copy of last year's tentative budget, just to do some comparisons on numbers, where the village was numbers-wise on their tentative budget last year. And you also have a packet that lists the equipment and contractual expenses for this fiscal year to help with determining the frequency and the usage of last year's budget numbers to what we want to do for this upcoming year, so that if there is some lines that look like they are pretty plumb with remaining balances, it'll allow you to discern whether or not maybe there could be some adjustments to those budgets. So this is going to be a little bit of a discussion about where we can find opportunities. I also, and I'll thumb through the pages so we can talk about some of the items related to revenue, some of the items related to the overtime piece. I factored in a 5% overtime factor into this budget. I added a line under the salary line that is for overtime only, and that line is then going to be used for overtime purposes. Now, mind you, at 5%, we've cut about 100,000 out of overtime, because it was around 10%. Okay, so the board needs to determine if that number is acceptable to them as far as the budget for budget purposes. If we need to increase it or lower it, you guys can give me guidance as to what you think. 5% gives you the wherewithal to be able to handle additional overtime requirements, but it's not going to allow department heads to be working on weekends, every weekend, to do sampling, okay? Which I think was the point. I think that's what the board wanted to do, is get away from that scenario. So this will force those departments to train somebody to handle the job that doesn't require them specifically there, okay? And that specifically goes to weekend work. We plussed up, or at least maintained the snow numbers. I'm right now in the process of trying to reorganize our bands, to get our bands all to full next year, so that we can pay them all at the same time and then turn them into maybe a serial bond. Okay, the one thing that the village has done a lot of that we should be getting away from is a lot of these bond anticipation notes. If we truly believe that we have to finance for long-term, we can do much better by financing a long-term bond.
We had a long-term bond and we ended up finding money. Can we pay it off, or are there other penalties?
Oh, no, we can't, bands can be paid off ahead, okay?
Why
Like a
is?
cereal.
Oh, you talking about cereal bonds?
Long-term debt, yeah.
Yeah,
Long-term.
long-term debt, and you're asking, would we want to pay it off early?
If someone just said, look, here's 10 million, could you pay off all your debt? Is there a penalty to bonds?
It depends. Certain bonds there is, certain bonds there isn't. It all depends on whether it's callable or not. That's specified in the bond document,
Usually they all have a call date, don't they?
yes. But some of them, there are certain restrictions, because again, the investors are kind of wanting to make some money out of their
Right,
investment.
and if they go long on a call date, you get a better deal, don't you?
Yes, but again, everything is specific to the specifics of the bond, the specific bond. Because again, the lenders, the people that are involved in the actual instruments have to, it depends on how they're structuring it. If we look at ours, I'd have to review ours for specifics, but I'll tell you realistically, at 1%, you're probably better off using the debt to your advantage.
1%.
In the position the village is in, okay? If the village was flush with cash, reserve funds, blah, 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 I would say, sure, if you don't have to have any debt, why have debt? But, right now, like the band that's going to, we're gonna get the proceeds on Wednesday, I believe it was 1.96. A serial note, combined, let's say we combine all the bands into a serial note, we're closer to 1.1. 80 basis points is a significant amount of money.
And I guess if we're gonna borrow, now's the time to do it, you know. for-
Well, that and any money coming in, any additional money coming in, as much as I wanna pay off the debt, if we get a phenomenal rate for this that can handle the debt for now, I'd rather move forward on unfinished projects that are still pending in the village.
Well, also, one of the things that will come up too is that because of the union contract for the police, there's going, there's a potential piece of liability there. In a serial bond, let's say that gets introduced next year, part of that instrument can be used to cover those costs. Because remember, if you agree that 3 months from now, we're gonna pay, whatever the structured agreement is for the police department, the treasury can pay for that, but we'll have to get the money later, because we'll need that for operating costs. See what I'm saying? So we can kind of loan ourselves the money to pay it up front, but then later on, there'll be a deficit, we'll need to do that, structure that by borrowing the money. We could borrow the money right away, but we don't necessarily need to, because it would also all be A fund
Exactly.
debt. Kind of like what we're doing with the water tanks. Okay, the water tanks, that amendment was done last May. We're not borrowing the money until now. So 2% interest for 9 months on $400,000, couple $1,000. So it's just how we structure it. Again, in a higher interest rate environment, it's even more important, because a 9-month spread on an 8% on 400,000,
A lot of money.
30 grand, I think.
What
Is it
was-
40? Yes, it's up there.
Sorry, what were the two instruments that had what amounted to a balloon payment?
One was the, hang on, let me find I'll have to go back. One was the street reconstruction principle. It was 50,000, then it went to 112.5. That's a ban. And then the other one turned out to be, when I did more research on it, it turned out to be a 2003 note that was consolidated into the 2012 financing. Last year, they made the last payments on it. The problem is the bondholder didn't make it clear that that was paid off.
Oh, so that is,
So, yeah, so I had to
That's one
research
less.
out.
Okay.
Well, it's not, it's one less physically, but they were built into the new bond that took that amount and combined it. So you just have a bigger debt on that bond.
on what is now
2003.
2012?
Yes, 2003 merged in with 2012. And what happened was, and this is what got me doing the investigation is that the principal was about $60,000 or $65,000, but the interest was like $9,000. When the schedule called for the interest to be more like, I remember somewhere like $70,000. So that kind of put up a red flag, and so I started to do some research. I called our Munistat Noah Nadelson, and I asked him, I said, look, are you aware of the fact that these bonds, principal or interest, aren't being paid? And he went back and did research. He said, yeah, what ended up happening is that they were merged together. But I asked him, well, where is the paperwork that says that the bond's been paid off? And he said that he would look into it, and he did find it. So yeah, it's more of sometimes just when you're reconstructing stuff, you have to ask a couple questions. So we have certain structural stuff as far as the serial bonds are now complete. So that is pretty much set in stone. The schedules and the interest are all based on their debt schedule. The bans are what I'm working on. There are 4 bans. There's actually 5 transactions with 4 bans, because remember the water tanks were amended. They were $550 and then they went to $950, but we paid $50,000 off of it. So there's about $900 in debt there. So that's one ban. You also have a street reconstruction ban, we have 2 sewer bans, and that's the 4. So that's what I'm trying to do, is what I'm trying to set up is that we make 2 payments next year, smaller payments, that will all coincide about the same time. And then if they coincide about around the same time, we try to structure a bond out of those bands to get it all into one package at half, 90 basis points lower on the debt. That we can do. It's good that we structure it toward the March timeframe. One of the problems we have with the June ban is that it walks backwards. So if you're, like in this case, we're June 7th, if every time we refund it, we go a day back. So we could march ourselves right back into the earlier fiscal year, and then that becomes an accounting nightmare, because you're now doing something in the past fiscal year. Yeah, so that's why it's not advisable to take debt so quickly after the start of your fiscal year. The other reason is that you're flush with cash. Remember, you're getting all of your receipts from your property taxes. So you have funds, and unless it's specific to the sewer or water, well, sewer, let's see, water would be good because water was collected in May. You really have a lot of flexibility with your finances then. So typically, it's better to take your debt later in the year, if you can. Sometimes you can't, but you know that's one of the things that would be helpful here if we do what we're doing here. Okay, so where do we want to start? Do you guys want me to flip through stuff first and then take a look at the O2s and O4s and see if there's areas you want to highlight on or trim? You remember, there's a lot of stuff in here that was added in. This is our wish list right now, okay? You've got $53,000 for the senior center, okay?
And right now, how much above the 2% cap on?
Right now, we're looking at, the actual from last year, we're at 55 cents.
Right, how much money do we have to cut right now, is my question.
In hundreds of thousands? I'd have to calculate that, but let's put it to you this way. We probably are looking at maybe 250, 300.
$300,000 over the cap?
300,000 to bring us down into
Within
Under the cap.
And again, remember, this is fluctuating because if I mess with the debt and I make lower payments on the debt, that frees us up with more money to be able to do stuff with operating activities today. So what we do with those 4 bands, you know, if I go and I say, okay, we're gonna pay those bands off based on a 5-year payment plan, those bands are gonna be 80,000, another one is gonna be, let's see, that one's at 400, so that's gonna be about, I think, 75,000 or 70,000. But if I decide to cut that in half, because you guys want that, then what happens is I free up maybe $150,000 that I don't pay, because there's the resolutions for these bands, one, I know one is 15 years, the other I believe is 30 years you have to technically pay, you just refund it every year. But the goal here, again, if we're going to do that, let's take 80 basis points off and make it into a bond.
How long is that? How long to pay off?
What, the bond? Normally you'll do a 30-year. Remember, these are long-term, a lot of your debt is your water and sewer, and that's financed by your rates.
And that's not going anywhere.
No, and it's infrastructure improvements. And if you look, your water revenues should pick up, because you should start picking up more town water revenue. And in turn, your sewer revenue benefits from that, because it's a factor of your water revenue. So, so a lot of your short-term debt is focused on your infrastructure improvements. Now, mind you, you know, if those improvements had been done more years back, you might have had less of a debt here, but that's water under the bridge. You got to do it. There's also some things coming down the road. Again, Webb Lane might rear its head, even though we're close to paying it all off, because you know there is some deterioration over there.
Well,
Is
and
what
that's
I'm told.
shared by the residents as well.
Right. what are we, like a fifth owner or a sixth?
We
or-
pay like 18, I think it's 18.5.
So on the bonds, when do you want to make a decision on that?
When do you want to make a
Well,
decision?
that's what I'm
You
asking.
want to see what we can cut, and then he can make that adjustment on the financial end with the short-term debt.
Yeah, remember, we have today and Wednesday. Technically, this would be presented by Gina to the board next Monday. Now, you have till next Thursday. There's nothing that's saying that you have to have this done by Monday. If you want more time, you have it. You do have some time. So if it turns out that we want to maybe have a final meeting next Monday, then you just have to have a special meeting so it can be introduced. So that gives Gina time to do all the necessary advertisements and so on. Because it's subject to public hearing, and then after the public hearing, then modifications can still be made after.
Okay, let's go through it.
Okay? All right, so, again, this is, I would call this an 80% solution right now, because there's still some things that we're trying to decide on. So let's flip to, let's look at the revenue side, okay? I'll just give you a little bit of stuff on the estimates I have on the revenue side. Special property tax assessments, I need to do a little more research on that and look at our actuals from last year to determine what kind of numbers should go there. Again, it's an estimate. So that's going to help you, because that number, there will be a populated number there, so that will help in your revenue line. Interest, penalties, and taxes, that's set at 22. People are paying later, and they're subjecting themselves to the taxes that go with lateness, so that revenue has been increasing. The expectation is that probably will be a solid number. Again, subject to change, a couple thousand here or there, but I think it's pretty good. Sales tax, we've been pulling in about 280,000 per quarter. So if you do the math, we're pretty close to 1,120,000. I put 125 because sales tax numbers are improving.
That's
People are-
good to hear.
Yeah, people are buying stuff for now. Okay, so, and if you look, it's not a crazy number, because in 2012-13, it was 1.125, 126, 337, so it's all in line. Now, again, this is a conservative number. I could put a little bit more aggressive number in there, which wouldn't be crazy, but
What was the number 5 years ago when things were better? Do you have any?
I'd have to research. I don't
No, I
know.
was just kind of curious if this is the number that,
Uh,
looking for,
I-
out a year or two.
I would estimate that probably 2007 might be in the range,
Yeah.
but I'd be guessing. I
No,
don't
I'm just
recall.
curious, just to see if this is the number that we're gonna be at for a while.
It's been consistent,
Okay.
and the advisories that are coming from the county is that they expect, it to be steady. The big tug of war going on between the county and the towns is that the towns want the county to give more. They want them to provide the towns with more. But the county's got a lot of financial concerns themselves, so I don't see that happening. I know it was a big argument for a couple of years that the town supervisors and mayors wanted to get more support from the county, but with the social services and all that other stuff, it's eaten up a lot of the revenue. Okay, so next, utilities, gross receipts. It's been budgeted for 50,000 for the last couple of years. It hasn't touched 50,000. It's more touched 40,000, 42,000. So I put it at 40 because I don't think we're gonna see that kind of number. I can put it at 50, but I think we're stretching there to get that revenue. Franchise fees, 71,000. Last year was about 67 and change, this year. So we're in the ballpark, so I left it at 70. That's not a crazy, it's pretty,
It's just Time Warner.
pretty supported. It's more than Time Warner, it's Time Warner, and it's also, who else is it? It's a couple other little guys in there. I don't think it's just Time Warner. I can check it. Let's see, other, you know, some of the other ones there, the vital statistics fees, I mentioned that's coming from the clerk's office, and that is a direct reimbursement, so that's, you know, that's kind of nothing that really you're gonna rely on one way or another, and it's pretty modest for the overall budget. On-street parking meters, there is a person hired. There's an expectation. Now, I didn't get this number from the police department. I put this number in because the 28,000, I believe, needs to offset some of the costs of this person. So kind of like your fines and bail, there's an expectation that you're gonna be pulling in, you know, 30,000+ there. I think from parking meters, you probably should expect a higher number than last year. Now, the actual revenues for 2012-13 were about 23,000. They have been increasing. I wasn't able to pull, I'll probably write down just to pull what it is this year. Okay. Interest and earnings, again, it's been tracking around 5, so I've left it at 5.
Whoops, what about planning board fees?
That's not budgeted. It's kind of one of those where if it comes in, it comes in, but it hasn't, it's hard to estimate that because you don't know how many projects are potentially coming. Right now, there's like 1. So I don't feel comfortable putting anything in there. If you want, I can, but I just, you know, are there any projects that are outside of the?
The one is pretty big.
No, no.
Yeah, they've kicked in, some money. Again, let me research.
Why are we putting money towards planning board fees?
Well, no, it's not, it's revenue. We're getting
Oh,
it.
revenue, okay.
Yeah,
This is the plus side.
yeah, we're on the bigger this number is, the happier we'll be, believe me.
Yeah, actually, you know what, I'm okay with leaving it for 0 then, let's make it a gift.
Okay, so, but I'll research, if it looks like, we have some potential there. Gina, do you know how far they are through the planning board?
We just dropped the plans off a couple weeks ago, right?
Well, last week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how far.
Okay, because I think their upfront fees for the original application have been paid, so what they would.
There's a hearing set for the zoning board right now.
Yeah,
So after that, Teresa said then they have to go back to our planning board for a site hearing, I think.
but I don't think that they have any other fees right now, right? Because to get into the planning board, they had to pay their fees. So I would recommend you leave it at 0. I just don't think, you know, if you get a gift there, you take it. Okay,
Like a fire truck.
That's what I'm talking about.
okay, business occupational license, 2012-13 was a little bit of an aberration, left it at 500. Again, these are pretty modest areas, as you can see. An area that I think is worthy of discussion, of maybe upping it, I was conservative with 30,000, is your fines forfeited bail. Your actual was 31,955. And again, you can thank the courts because that number historically was a lot lower than that, only the last couple of years. The prosecutor that was brought on board, the efforts that were made to make sure that there, you know, a lot of stuff isn't ACD'd and you get your revenue. I haven't had a discussion with the new attorney, with Mr. Fatsis. I don't know, Mayor, have you?
Does he deal with, is that what this is? Because forfeited, usually fines meaning the tickets, but forfeited bail, he doesn't deal with
It's all-
those.
Yeah, but it's all part of that department.
Okay, yeah, because I was just actually talking to him today about that, where it's still the DA that deals with that.
Yeah, that's just the, you
Few
know,
people, mainly we're dealing with tickets, this is
yeah,
what you're saying.
that fines and forfeited bail is just a category.
I'd say 30,000 is definitely respectable, he's shooting higher than that.
Yeah, well, remember, your revenues in 12-13 were 32,000.
Right, he's definitely going, he wants to see it much higher than that, so.
Well, what do we want to budget?
I don't want to budget more than 30
You want to leave it at 30?
this year, because this will be his first year.
Okay,
Let's see what we do, and we'll go from there.
okay, all right. Okay, a lot of the other stuff, again, insurance recoveries, you can't budget for that. That was a big hit there. Interfund revenues, I'm looking at that as far, the area that's going to benefit with interfund revenues is the allocations from sewer and water. Right now, I've got them listed at 10,000 each, so that number will be at least 20,000. I'm just doing a little bit more research if that's an accurate number. State revenue sharing, it's been pretty consistent.
What is that?
What's that?
What is it?
Yeah, what is it, what is the state revenue?
What is that, where does that money come from?
There's an apportionment, the state gives an apportionment, I don't remember what the, how it's structured, but they give an apportionment of revenues that are generated. I'm trying, I'll have to look it up, I'm trying to
Don't
remember.
make me, I hate hitting you these questions.
No, it's all right,
I just wanna know.
I'll
We don't
find out.
have control over it.
Oh, okay.
But I'll find out what the metric is, but it's essentially a portion of state-generated funds that are refunded back to the village.
That's not the sales tax or anything?
No,
Is that like fines and stuff on state roads, like?
Well, let me check, I don't wanna guess, let me check on that.
Thank you.
Okay, mortgage tax is self-explanatory. Mortgage activity's been pretty, steady, let's say. It's harder to sell, but there's still turnover. So, we left that flat. CHIPS money, 25,000 is basically what's advised is what we're getting. And, as far as, I don't know, I think 2012-13, there might be an issue, because that number shouldn't be zero. I don't know
Yeah.
if something
Yeah.
got missed
I
or.
thought we got 28.
Yeah, that number, I don't know what's going on there, but we should expect about 25. I'll check I'm gonna also check what we got so far this year. I think it comes later. No, I think we got some of it already. I'll have to check that. Let me just check what that is, as far as where it is now. Recreation aid, again, can't budget for that.
Recreation aid?
Recreation aid.
What is that?
It was a one-time thing that was done in 2012-13, I don't know exactly what it was. But it's not budgeted for, it's not expected. Okay, and then you have your interfund transfers, 20,000 at the bottom. So, when we add up all of this activity, we get to where the number for the general fund being just under $3 million to be raised by taxes. Okay? Last year's appropriations to be raised by taxes on the final budget were $29.49, but it was on a higher taxable assessed valuation. Okay? Our taxable assessed valuation is down about 25 million. Okay, all right, now remember, your general fund is largely your tax-generated fund, okay? Your water and sewer are gonna come from fees, and in addition to your property taxes is your sales taxes. Those are the two big, the big contributors. Everything else, might equate to a couple $100,000 under that. So sales tax estimates and our real property tax estimates are the most significant when we do this calculation. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. Expenditures, general fund. We obviously, again, we covered all these areas. We're just going to kind of flip down through them, and if any questions come up, just let me know, and I'll try to answer them, and if I don't know, I'll get an answer. Again, mind you that right now I factored in 2% for salaries, and let's see. Yeah, so the areas that I think still are worthy of maybe review is your attorney, listed at 40,000. You're below that this year. The attorney hasn't been used. I'll pull up the number for that, see where we're at right now. You should have it on the sheets there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things we can pull right off of the sheets, but your attorney, again, my recommendation is that you have you have legal counsel one meeting a month. I think it would be worth the money. But, you know, obviously you have to be comfortable with that. Should be, Charlie, it should be 1420. So this would be on this one.
18, it's multiple. 18,230, is that possible?
Yes, 18,230, that's up year to date.
That's what the council costs us?
Yeah, so far this year. Now, remember, that's
That
including,
includes Goldberg.
that's including Goldberg.
Right.
That's right, yeah. Now, that does not include your village attorney for prosecution.
Right.
That's separate. Okay, so.
That was 8,000 prorated,
8,500.
but prorated for this year, so.
I guess I think it's starting this month, right?
Yes.
Mr. Fatsis is starting this month, okay.
End of the month.
End of the month, okay. And that's in the 04.1. It's listed on the budget right there. So, you know, we're definitely below what was budgeted. So you might have a little bit of room there if the expectation is that you're not going to utilize legal services to the degree that maybe it had been done in previous years. Because the in 2012, $43,000 for the 04 were used. And so far this year, we've got 18.
Well, one of the things that we're doing, and I know you guys feel more comfortable with doing since going to the conference, was I've been using Nikon more. And the results, I'm getting, not to bad our attorney, but because Nikon that's their field, I'm getting much quicker answers and more concrete answers, like on Bog Meadow, which I'll show you after we go through this.
Okay. Okay, did that meeting happen, correct?
Meeting happened.
Okay, all right, I'll be very curious.
I have that on my notes afterwards. We
Okay.
can do that,
All right.
keep everybody suspense.
You're smiling.
Okay.
I hope
No.
that's- No?
No, I'm not, let me do that and fix it.
Okay.
Okay,
There's both, there's a smile and a non-smile, we'll figure out the game.
okay. All right, so, so that, I would just put a big question mark that maybe that can be trimmed down to 30,000, that might get
I
you
agree.
10,000, okay?
So
So,
let's do that right off the bat.
Yeah.
you guys comfortable just putting that right up?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, 30,000. Okay, engineers listed at 25,000. Experience in 12-13 was just under 15,000. This year, it's sitting at 18,600,
18,674.
yeah. Well, no, that's what's remaining. So, it was 1325 plus 180, but that was refunded. So you're essentially engineer, you haven't used very much either. Now, I think that there's a lot of billing pending. Gina, from Fulchetti? I haven't seen much from them.
Right, I haven't seen much, but I don't know what they've done.
Well, we got the hazard mitigation, which we don't know, it's gonna be between 10 and 15.
No, I actually heard from him, and he gave me an email that it costs to do initially around 60 something, and they could probably redo it for about half of that. And the other one came in too, Fusco, at around that number.
Fusco
In the
came in at about
30,
30?
in the 30s, and I haven't heard yet back from.
Do we know how
Filled
much it
out.
cost the first time you did it?
I'd have to go back and add up, but he said it looked like about 60,000 in their invoicing. I'd have to go back and look, but
And
if
then
he said that,
I don't remember. paying that much,
MS4s, he wants.
the MS4, they're asking, I sent you an email. They've typically done that for us. Julie does it, she's the lower paid admin person there, but they have it on their computer, so they probably just update with the new year. But it's that time of year whether we want them to do it. They're asking us whether we want them to do it. So
Well,
we
you might be
can talk
moving the
about that.
10,000 from attorney to the
Yeah.
engineer.
There you go, yeah.
So, based on those numbers.
We shouldn't fool with the engineer's numbers, you're right.
Well, how many years has the hazard mitigation for?
5. It's renewed every 5.
Tell me again what we're not entitled to if we don't.
All the millions we got from FEMA.
Grant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Grant money.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I'm
Yeah,
really,
I just need to hear
And
that right
FEMA.
well. I'm trying to remember why we're spending
that's
that.
the biggest thing.
Okay.
Now, have we got anything back from Glenn Valley about that?
Not yet.
All right, we need to go back, I want a third one, because
I'm surprised that Judas didn't get back, you know.
yeah,
Gotta be hungry for this stuff. We should, you know.
if they don't come in nice and under, I wanna go back to Fusco and Paul Shetty and get a better number. Say, look, you come in at 22 and we'll talk, you know, because Fusco also wants to get, I don't mind. We have a main engineer and then have 4 engineers that are helping us out. Hazard mitigation is hazard mitigation, doesn't matter, you get us the right paperwork for the right price. You know, you're not building a bridge, you're not doing this, it's just paperwork.
And it's just, I would think, it's updating paperwork they did.
This is
Well,
for,
you have to
yeah.
hold meetings, you have to get the community involvement again, it's like
Yeah.
doing it
So
over.
it's time consuming, I understand that part of it, but it's just, it's not re-engineering the whole, I don't think much has changed.
They're printing it out off their computer.
It's
Come
just
on, people.
doing the process.
Yeah.
All right, sorry,
Sorry.
let's keep going. At this point, are we looking for hazard mitigation to be finished by this budget, or is that gonna end up being on the next budget?
My guess is the next budget, it takes a process, it takes
Yeah.
more than a month to do. You're already at the end of March.
So, I mean, at the very least, that's gonna be 30, we have to figure 30 best case scenario right now.
Yeah, you mean as far as budgeting it for this, in
Mhm.
this budget? Yeah, that's, you're gonna have to do that, but I'm still kind of mystified by the cost. It just seems
Yeah, me
like
too.
it's, again, I don't know, I have no idea what that
Me
would
neither.
cost.
But yeah, me too. I think that to update something, I'm thinking,
I'll hire an engineer full-time, you know, in 6 months they can get it done, it'd probably be cheaper. you
Well, I know that the process, after they get it together, they have to deal with FEMA and the state to get it approved, so it has to go through them reading
So there's
it,
a lot of
coming back.
handling.
If there's comments that they have to address, so there's a lot of that back and forth with those authorities.
So the drafting is probably a small portion of the whole piece.
Right.
It's the time being used for
The approval
hearings
process.
The approval
and everything else.
process.
Then, you know what, I was okay, I'm gonna need somebody else's answer then. Because I was okay when I thought it was 10,000, when we were told, you know what, we're not gonna do one with the town. But I would like to go back and ask Fusco, since he is now the town new engineer, can we do one hazard mitigation plan for the entire town that would cover us?
Or some economies of scale where he works on
Something.
both.
Well, that or, is it because we're incorporated, we have to have our own? We're part of the town of Highlands.
Yeah, we're asking questions that I don't think any of us have
Well-
the answer to.
That, I'm gonna call Nikon, but I also wanna see if Fusco has an answer. We got Falchetti's answer, he's saying, no, we have to do one, but that's a $30,000 thing for Falchetti, which I don't bad him, hey, I get the extra 30, get the extra 30. But I'd like to ask Fusco and Glenn Gildaly about this, cause, you know, that extra 20 out of nowhere, to me, and the possible, hey, it was 60, but we'll cut it in half. That's something we definitely have to do, but at this point, either or, I will go with the 15 and the 30 and put 45 in for engineering. Because this has to be done, because if we get another hit, we have to be covered. And if we end up doing a joint with the town, and even giving them a portion of the money to cover because I assume the towns came out of the B fund and not the A fund.
Correct.
So if we get them to cover the entire town, that's the other problem, is their thing might have only been for Montgomery. It may not have been the whole town.
Yeah, that's a good question, because actually, the town encompasses a village. Would there be some ability to piggyback off of that? With the state so focused, rightly so, on cutting the cost of municipal governments, you would think that they would work provisions to allow shared efforts with engineering.
Well, that, and if the process is the process, and if the town probably is spending the same, because they have to go through the whole process. So if we just had a full town hazard mitigation plan, now we're gonna save $30,000. Problem is that we've never come together on it,
Yeah, you
So-
wouldn't have two sets of engineers going through the same time.
making their money. So it's gonna be the same cost either way, so, but I'd like to go to Fusco, find out what the deal is. Do we ever get a date on when theirs is up?
I think in his email, he mentioned that he did want to talk to the board when the town's is up, which I think is coming up soon. It's either at the end of this year or next.
So to me, I would say, let's redo it for the entire town. And see if we can't get half the cost from, at least half the cost from the town. And we'll redo it now, and that'll give us another 5 years. That still saves them money.
Wait a minute, I think I have
That
it.
still saves them like 10 grand.
No, it just makes sense to do it that way, if it can be done, but again, I don't know anything about what the requirements are.
In terms of the budget, can we encumber part of the 18,000 that's unused to date?
Are you gonna specifically apply it to that? And is it gonna happen within a month or two of the new fiscal year? Because that's kinda how you wanna structure it.
Right, well, we can, as long as we pick, right, as long as we pick the engineer that's gonna do it, and give him the money prior to the budget, right?
Yeah, but you don't necessarily have to do that, because if you don't spend the money, it goes into the balance, fund balance. You just have a bigger fund balance.
Right, but
The
we're
reason-
trying, what the
The
reason
reason why
is.
you're gonna encumber it is if, it has to be a scenario where it's a service provided in this fiscal year that you roll over because you're not gonna get the final bill.
Right.
You gotta be careful, well, this probably.
But if he takes a deposit, I'm only looking,
You
the
don't
reason
wanna
I'm
pay a
saying that is
vendor
the
a
2%.
deposit.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying the 2%,
I'd have to.
that's what I'm shooting for.
We'd have to find out, because you can't,
I don't wanna do the wrong thing, but
Yeah.
what we're looking to say is,
I'll find.
that's $15,000, we might be able to.
I'll try to get some guidance on it. I don't,
With you.
I'm kind of thinking that it might
You
be,
can't.
might be gray. Yeah, because it's.
I'm okay with gray, I just want, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'll see if we can do something with it there. We, see, the problem is if you're gonna encumber it, you're gonna have to, he's gonna have to, demonstrate that some of the work being performed is being performed for this fiscal year. So that would have, you would have to get that worked out pretty quickly.
All right.
If you do, maybe there's something, something to be done there.
All right, so we'll keep that on the back end and see.
Okay.
So right now you want to add 15, did you say, to engineer?
Unfortunately, 20.
That's not going in the right direction.
No,
Not in that one.
Okay. So next is, let's see, where we at now?
elections,
Elections. Again, some of these are probably not big ticket, but it's gonna help you very much.
right, no real change there, right, Gina?
Central Garage, it's your mechanic. Again, all of these are, I'm thinking that the mechanic himself might be able to be afforded a overtime line. I might put one in there for 10%. I'm sorry, 5%, which would be about $2,500. I kind of need guidance from you guys on that. Do you want overtime lines for any of the labor positions that,
How difficult is that to do?
it's easy to do,
Done.
it's just money that
No, I
needs to
definitely
be apportioned for that.
I definitely want overtime lines then.
Okay.
Typically for the garage though, Walter, if he's overtime in snow, that's out of the snow budget.
Mhm.
So he doesn't usually stay overtime in the garage.
Yeah, well, that's why I kind of didn't put much of anything there.
Then don't, yeah, 'cause
But if he has any occasions, you won't be able to classify it overtime if I don't give you a line with something in it. You know, so I could put a line in there and put $500 in it, and if it
Yeah.
turns out that it's more than that, we can transfer into that fund.
All right, I'm a little
So-
thrown here by the equipment being 0.
Without it.
Well, don't we need parts?
Well, it looks like the way it's been budgeted is come out of contractual.
Okay. Are they looking at equipment more of like lifts and stuff like that and vehicles?
Capital type equipment?
Is that what that, I mean,
Yeah,
I guess.
you know, they can budget if they wanna put a new fork, or a new hydraulic lift in there. Just check something, just wanna make sure. Yeah, central equipment has been, not populated.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it can't be, but it just.
Well, no, again, I'm just looking for it to be in the right, if contractual is where all the parts and everything should be, then that's fine.
Yeah, but remember, as far as your equipment, it's gonna be stuff that is not consumables.
Okay.
Okay, so if he wants to like buy a tire balancer, that would fall into the equipment line. Yeah, you
Okay.
know, filters and
Right,
shocks and that kind of stuff, he's not gonna do that.
got it.
Let's see. So I'm gonna throw in a line there. And that would also qualify for buildings and salary, an overtime line there. Again, that's a small $15,000 number, probably very little overtime
Now,
exposure.
this is what?
1620.01.
I know that, no, what is the building salary, who is that for?
I would have to really look that up.
That's not the cleaning, is it?
Yes, Ava's cleaning.
Is that what it is?
Is that what it was?
That should be in contractual then.
Well, there's
Yeah, that's the-
56,000 in
the
contractual
400
and
line.
Right, there's,
15.
the salary used to be, Ricky, but he's not a salary.
Yeah, that's
anymore.
true. Hang on a second, that might be a catch. Hold on. That might be, we might be okay there.
Yeah, I don't have the 1620-100 in the expense ledger.
Yeah, because Ricky's not with us this year. Okay, that's a catch. That can be stricken.
So the 15,000 is not there?
Yeah, that can be stricken because that went in, see, you notice the contractual went up 14,000?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, I'm like, yeah.
Okay, that's what it was. I didn't remove it. So
Okay.
that's okay.
Okay.
Good catch.
So then our biggest thing on this was our savings is not so much the dollars on the actual cleaning, but it's the residual, like on the fact that we have to pay them on the back end, benefits and
And
stuff.
while he was part-time, he was only not getting, that, but, Medicare FICA
This is what 56 is what we budgeted or booked her at?
and service.
No, that's not just her.
Yeah, and Time Warner.
That's
falls under this
everything
line.
for.
Oh, okay. All right,
That's
let's
just,
say-
she's included as
That's
part
a
of.
serious
contract.
number for cleaning, I like that.
No.
No,
Um,
and that's where you, if you wanted to put something in, like you talked about for painting the building, or
Right,
we need a new furnace, we wanna start building for that,
that,
or,
unfortunately, that's something that we need to do.
those type of things.
As much as I like the fact we just saved the 15,000, maybe we can take 5 or 3, 5 to 3, and put it in a contingency fund or whatever, a reserve fund for the building, for specifically boiler or whatnot, so we're not hit with a $20,000 hit.
Right. I think you talked about it, a reserve for the buildings.
Right.
Yeah, do we want to set up a building reserve?
I would like to, because we're gonna have to paint shortly. And downstairs is a mess. We were able to fix things up this past year, but we are gonna have to replace that shortly.
Well, when you say short, Mayor, when you say
So
shortly.
when I see Gina's face, that means sooner than later.
Are we having troubles with the heating?
Well, we do every year, we seem to get it Band-Aided to get us through the season. And so far, we did early this, get it Band-Aided, and we've been doing okay.
Yeah.
Well,
had to redo all downstairs.
can you afford a reserve fund, or is this something that's a capital expense that's gonna have to be,
Is that the better way to do it?
it depends on when you need it. If you have a couple of years, then yeah, build up a reserve fund for it, but if this is imminent,
Well, if it's working and it's maintained, then when I quit, yeah, reserve fund sort of makes sense.
I would rather do a reserve fund,
Yeah.
because, again, it's not something where we know it's gonna break, but we know it's on the way.
Right.
So,
okay, so how much do you wanna put in? What is it, I don't know, Bob, what does the furnace cost?
It depends, I don't know how big, how many sections this boiler is, it could be quite expensive, it could be $30,000-$40,000,
All right, so
I'd like to go 5.
5,000?
Well, we just say 15,
No, let's do 5.
because we're not just looking at the boiler, we're looking
Your net
at.
now is 0, because you picked up an
I know,
attorney,
I know.
you end up spending
I
on
know that, but the-
engineer, so
if-
you're now net 0 if you put 5.
Well, let's do this, let's take that 5 and we're taking the 5 out of the reserve, but let's make a note that on the cutting, that'll be towards the initial cut. And we'll have to go with a capital project rather than a reserve if need be, if something happens between now and next year.
Or can we, if it's a reserve fund, can it, anything on the building, it could be paint, could be the boiler, it could be.
Yeah, I think that they are tight funds, they're not
Okay.
specific,
Okay,
so I think you have the ability. I'll check that again.
Right.
The rules are kind of funky with different funds, but I'm pretty sure it's a tight fund.
alright,
So you can do it. Again, mind you, these are all categorized as revenue lines, okay? They're gonna be in the expense, but they're four zeros, and then because we typically we're not spending the money, we're putting it away for a rainy day.
Right.
So when you see it on there, it's gonna have 0000, and you're gonna see it in the expense side, it's there because it's gonna be spent, but the way the accounting's done with it, it's put under the expense line. Because you're gonna take that money out of the budget, so you gotta appropriate for it,
Right.
okay? All right, I didn't get a chance, Gina, to catch up with you. Did CLG drop off a proposal?
No, he's working on that now, he's going out to get his numbers. He said probably, maybe look at what we did this year, and hopefully it'd be under a 10%. He thought that our claims weren't that bad, that the rates should come in.
Okay, so he's saying take our number and add 10?
He's hoping it'll be a little less than that, maybe 8 to 10%. Not looking for it to be more than that. But
Okay.
he's out now getting his,
You're talking about unallocated insurance or judgment
Yeah.
funds?
yeah,
Insurance.
unallocated. I think it was around 128, 129, or 130 that we paid, somewhere in there.
Okay. All right, yeah, we were about 116. So we could probably get away with 125. Do you want me to lower that?
And what is unallocated insurance?
It's pretty much your liability insurance, your public officer's insurance for, potential theft. It's.
Your public officials insurance,
yeah,
your
the
vehicles,
officials'
general
insurance.
liability.
Errors and omissions?
Yeah, errors, emissions, pretty much protecting the board from, if you guys make a mistake, a significant mistake, or if
Right.
somebody makes a significant mistake, or we have a loss of
Is
some
that
kind.
standard to go up like that? Or do we have some issues this last 2 years?
No, it's going up, but as Gina said, I haven't talked to Scott Lieber, but he did mention that it seems like our experience isn't terrible.
Okay.
So that's probably in line,
Yeah, let's take about
5%.
Let's take about 5,000.
Okay. Okay, so I got that at 125. If we get any updated information in the next week, I'll adjust that accordingly. Okay, I added, like I said, I put 5,000 in judgment and claims because we need it. I guess potentially we could, if we really need to break
Right.
it down, we could knock a
If
couple
we need
thousand
to,
off of
right.
it.
I'd like to leave it, I agree with you that we need to start building that kind of a fund up. I think we can kill the 75 in the MTA and just not pay them.
Yeah, no, you can't.
Start the,
Unfortunately.
Start the thing now. Get all the towns behind us, just don't pay.
Oh, well, we've been in court with them.
Yeah, we're at 7,100 this year so far for MTA. Okay.
Contingency?
Hang on a second, no, we're not 7,100, we're actually at
It's like we're gonna go over.
5,700.
Oh, good.
So we're pretty much on par, so 7,500 is probably okay. I could probably trim 500 off of that, but, not a whole lot. Okay, contingency. We upped it to 50,000. Again, if we get to a point where we need to do something with
Do we have
that.
anything in the contingency fund right now?
Yeah, we have some, but remember, we used it for the Knights of Columbus.
Right.
Let me tell you what contingency is right now, 1990. Dropped off for whatever reason. Should have to- I'll have to check it, it's not, I don't see it on the page. I don't know.
Okay. No big deal. I'm okay with, I want the 50, but when we come down the end, I'm okay with cutting that in half. If, worst case scenario.
If you need it, okay.
So, that's 25,000 would be fine if we have to, but we need to start building a contingency fund up, it's just that simple. we've seen way too many cases where,
Okay, central communications, I put the salaries in there based on the estimates. I did add the overtime line in. I wanted to know if we want to, what we want to fund for overtime, because we've had demonstrated activity over the last couple of weeks where part-timers being properly employed, really the only requirement for overtime would be on vacations.
so
And
this
fill
is
in.
just dispatches.
Yeah, that's all dispatching.
Okay, now, in the past, now we're having a separate line for overtime, in the past, was that just included in the regular salary, or was that just something we paid up
It was
in the end?
included. It was included to some degree, but some of it went beyond what was budgeted for. So, that's,
So how much was budgeted last year for overtime?
I have no idea. It was calculated in with the.
That's what I'm saying, it was.
Yeah, I'd have to take his number and try to figure out. how
So
we-
what you're asking us right now is how much do we want?
The only reason why I didn't put 5% here in is because after the board decided that they wanted to have support as far as oversight on the overtime, the dispatchers are incurring almost zero overtime, very little, okay? And it's what you take away from that. You know, do you take away that that's the norm, or do you take away that this is an aberration and maybe they need.
Well, they did backfill with, I think, 2 additional part-timers,
Mhm.
so they now have a larger pool.
Which was, in my opinion, which was precipitated by this board's decision to focus on that. So I think ideally, your dispatching department should incur relatively small overtime to cover vacations, days off, and so on, and then part-timers should be able to fill in. Plus the other discussion that we had about this potential other scenario. If that happens, there should be zero reason for overtime, as long as that continues.
I still like to have some sort of cushion there in case, whatever, that, you know, even if we have it,
I mean, we definitely have the budget for it.
yeah, we have the budget for some, but maybe half as
You
much
want
as
to use
we need.
2.5%?
No, I'd like less. Reason being, and I know that we'll have to find the money somewhere, I believe the more that we budget,
What you spend.
the more we spend, the more we send the message of, hey, we're giving you this much leeway. And I think that after this budget's passed, we have to be even more on top of the overtime and everything else. We're finding it's not coming as difficult as we thought. We thought it was gonna be much more of a hassle. The police in particular are
That department
following,
really
yeah.
responded well.
And now that,
Yeah, you get credit the police department, they responded well to the board's
Right.
request.
and now we move to the other departments. It's just that simple. We see the problems and they're responding, and I think that's how we should budget.
What was the overtime last year, 26, 28?
Yeah, I can pull it.
Somewhere around there, I thought it was.
Yeah, actually, I think you're right. So let's go 12,
Yeah, or even 10.
8. Give me another number.
But I
Are we
mean,
bidding for something?
actually,
In reverse numbers.
I think it was 26 and change. But if we have at least half of that as just sort of, if something happens, or let's say everything changes over there, somebody retires and somebody
Mhm.
fills in, these are things that don't happen too often, but it's a possibility of having that scenario.
Okay, your numbers, overtime numbers for, dispatchers were 30,000.
30,000.
And then you had about 8,000 in other.
What's that mean?
They have, you know, I'm assuming that has to do with their benefits. I don't know what else, I'd have to look, but it's categorized as other.
So the 219 is exactly what we're contracted to pay out to them at this point. This number.
That's based on 2%.
Okay. All right, so I'm good with 10
10,000?
for overtime total. Does that go with your 2%? Is that,
That 10 is about 3.5%.
oh, then let's go with, we wanted to go with 2.5, right? For 2.
I'm just basing it on this number. If you
Right.
wanna go based on the salary,
No, let's base it on the numbers and the adjustments we're making.
because based on the salary, you're looking at 5% is 11. So 2.5% is about 6,000.
It's kind of tight, I think. I mean, we don't have to spend it, but
Right.
at least if we do.
I'll meet you halfway at 8. You knew I was going there.
Well, 8, again, your experience last year was 30.
Yeah,
Okay, so
that might be.
8 is probably 2.5%. So just under, actually just over, because it'd be 32,000 on 8. So 7,500 will be 2.5%.
So 10.
10?
10,000.
And I already wrote it down.
You already wrote it down?
That's
You're already in there, huh?
And it's in pen.
Okay, so you're about 3 1/3%.
Now, for equipment, you've got $440?
Yeah, that's what they budgeted.
2 chairs, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good thing every time. I just hope everything else is.
Hey, remember he was talking about the fact that the chairs get worn out and they
Yeah,
need to be
the fact that
replaced?
they
That's
buy
right.
them every year, that just amazes me.
Yeah.
I guess it could be worse. You could have like a new desk every year. I guess a chair,
They do break down the other complex chairs that,
It's used
24/7.
365 days a year, so I don't know,
our
maybe,
chairs break all the time.
maybe a
Our desk
chair,
chairs, oh, they break all the time.
maybe a chair that's used that much,
Are we buying, well,
Well, for the
Or
440.
you talking about the fact that the chairs are $220 each?
well,
Regardless, it's just the fact that we're having such a
they were,
frequency.
yeah.
Well, I would think that too, if it wasn't, the other problem is, it's not you. It's 8 different people, and 8 different people moving and adjusting it, doing their own way. I'm not, I have that little thing too, but it's only 440, and the thing is, it's 3 shifts every day,
Oh,
I mean,
Yeah, at the big scheme of things,
Yeah,
I
it's
think
fine.
it's probably fine.
it hit me too, I'm like, really?
It's just
You
that I'm
gotta
not
get new
surprised
chairs
you
every
can
time,
wear out
and I'm like,
You just gotta
ah.
remember, it's every day, 24
Right, yeah,
hours a
yeah,
day, because
exactly.
that's a 24-hour.
If that's something, if that's all
Yeah,
they're asking
You don't want a morale
for-
issue
Yeah,
because
no,
of
no,
chairs.
no. Look, I'm taking this water anyway, that's 800, so I'm okay with that.
We're eliminating the water.
And that may be good, they may not be.
Never mind.
Bathroom breaks.
Let's
so
move
chairs-
on.
But no, I definitely, I have no
The chairs are
problem with
in.
chairs.
All right, so next we got a police, well, contractual was upped, let's see, 3020.04. Contractual is 5,322 is what's been spent.
See, these are the areas that I don't wanna jump over too quick, because these are the ones where we can cut for in specific things that go through there.
That's what's remaining, 5,000, so they spent 15.
What does that consist of, like contractual, like what stuff?
It's right here, uniform maintenance.
The biggest item was the
Okay.
computer, admin computer services, business electronics, I'm sure it's all support stuff.
Fuel, 36,000.
What?
Vehicle repair, or am I the wrong thing?
Fuel?
Police contractual?
This place-
I
Oh,
know,
no, no, we're-
communications.
Oh,
Communications.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
fuel loss.
Yeah, so what, sorry about that. Hold on.
Fuel for the chair?
That's why it costs so much. I'm on the wrong section, I apologize. Okay, here we are. Contractual. Uniform allowance, phone, dictaphone, office supplies, copy release, software maintenance, computer repair, radio lease, janitorial.